When modeling in Blender, we use objects, and when adding objects to the scene, we use the Add button here. You can choose from the options here according to the object you will add. For example, there is a text here. If you want to add a text to the scene, we use this. You can choose from the options here according to what you want to add to the scene. For example, let's add some meshes to the scene. It is already in the scene by default. Let's add a circle. Let's slide the circle like this, because it is not visible. Let's add a cylinder, because I will show some things through these. Let's add a cone again, and finally, let's add monkey, one of Blender's default objects. Now we have added a few objects to the scene, and with the edits made on these objects, we use various shortcuts in scene creation, or as we will see in a moment, in editing mode, and these shortcuts allows us to perform our work in a much more practical way. For example, let's say we want to select all of these objects that we added to the scene. We press the letter A on the keyboard. That is, deselecting the entire selection is also the result of pressing the letter A twice. I press the letter A twice on the keyboard, and this time it deselects all the selected objects. Now let me show you how to select all objects except the currently selected object. Of course, scenes are not that simple. There are complex scenes, and there are times when we need to select objects other than the currently selected active object. For example, if you want to select all objects except this one, we press Ctrl I. The letter I stands for word inverse, which means invert. When I press Ctrl I, as you can see, all other objects except the currently selected object become selected. When I press it again, this time it selects this object, which is the object outside the other selected objects. Let's select two objects. I press Ctrl I again. This time, it makes all the objects except these two objects selected. You want to concentrate on one object on the scene, and you don't want to see other objects on the scene. Then, I show you the shortcut to remove the selected objects, or rather, to hide the selected objects. I want to hide all the other objects except this one. I press Ctrl I, it has selected the others, and I press H, which is the initial letters of the word hide from the keyboard. When I press H, the selected objects are hidden. We can also see here that the selected objects are hidden. This object is now active and more visible, the others are more faded. The object, the others are hidden. To display the hidden objects again, for example to unhide them, we press the Alt key, this time pressing the letter H, and the others become visible. Now I'm hiding the other objects except for the cube. And now from object mode, we use edit mode here to start a little bit of modeling. And when we go to the edit mode, you will see that the options on the left side have changed. Or rather, you will see that new options have been added. What did we say? We need to learn keyboard shortcuts so we can model faster. The shortest way to switch to edit mode is the tab button. There are three concepts we need to know, and here are the equivalents of these three concepts. One of them is vertex. Vertexes are the connection points of the edges inside the objects. At the same time, the faces here also have connection points, and we can make edits on these points. The other important term we need to know is edge. So, these lines here. We can say that these vertexes are the connections to each other. When we select the edge mode, I can only edit on the edges. I'm selecting this edge right now. Another important term is face. When I click on face, we can select the outer layers here. We can select the surfaces here, and the shortcuts are 1, 2 and 3. This time we are not using the numpad side, we are using the numbers side by side. When I press 1, it switches to vertex mode. When I press 2, to edge mode, and when I press 3, to face mode. It is also possible to activate them with more than one option. When you press Shift and press these numbers, you activate more than one mode. Now we can move to the tools on the left, but you can also use the options here to access the tools on the left. The tools on the left are just shortcuts to some of the options here, just to get to them quickly because they are the most used tools. There are of course many other alternatives. You can also access them here. Let's select the Extrude option from the left side. In other words, let's go to the edit mode that we encounter when we press the 3 key on the keyboard. When I go to face edit mode, when I click on one of the polygons on the scene, one of the faces on the scene, you will see a plus icon. This plus icon indicates which way we are going to extrude. At the moment I have selected the face above, so when I drag this plus icon it will extrude upwards. You don't have to click on the extrude button here. You can also activate the extrude feature by pressing the letter E on the keyboard while the selection tool is selected. It will then perform the extrude operation along the area where you direct the mouse. There is one thing you should pay attention to. When you press the letter E on the keyboard while extrude and you press the right click to cancel it, there will be two vertexes here instead of one. I can show it like this. Even though I have cancelled it right now, there is a face here that looks like an extra extrude has been done. But this may not be visible because these are so close together. In order for you to cancel this extrude, you need to press Ctrl Z on the keyboard. When you press Ctrl Z, the vertexes will become one. So the fact that you deselected doesn't mean that we cancelled the extrude. That is what I want to say. If you look at the details of extrude, we have an option called extrude individual. It will extrude individually. For example, I'm selecting the left hand side and the right hand side areas, the faces in this area. As you can see, both of them are selected. Now the extrude individual option is active. So when I move this will both move in their own direction. This is what extrude individual does. I will show you one more example of extrude individual. And this is little difference needs to be understood. I'm extruding here again as extrude individual, but there is a distinction. When I select this part, when I move it upwards, you will see another face below. Normally, this face shouldn't be there, where it is extruded. But since I extrude as individual, it means that each face will extrude these two faces separately. Therefore, we can see that there are these faces in between. For this reason. But when I undo the operation, when I do a normal extrude, when I do an extrude like this, we will not see what we just saw. As you can see, these will not be independent of each other. When we do it individually, they are extruded independently. It is necessary to see this difference. Again, there is another extrude option that we need to know among the extrude options. I will show it as follows. I will see what a normal extrude operation means. I press the letter E on the keyboard. I perform the extrude operation as standard. You see the operation. This is how it made an extrude. Now let's do this extrude individually. When I do extra name as an individual, it completes this extrude process towards their own paths towards the face where their own faces return. And there is also an option called extrude along normals. This option is like this. Let's select two of them and expand them with extrude along normals. This is how we see an effect with normals. Down on the left you can see the other options of extrude. When you check offset even here, you can see that it will give us the appearance of the outer layer here after extrude, exactly as the outer layer appearance of the object here. I'm checking this option and as you can see, it is extruding exactly the same way it was initially. And finally, let's say the extra feature here. Extrude to cursor will extrude according to where you click. It is not only possible to do this with this layout. First of all, I just select the top and press the number 1 on the keyboard. So I go to the side plane. When I click on the extrude to cursor button, when I select this option, you will see this icon here. Where you click it will automatically extrude, just like this. I click here and it extrudes like this. It doesn't make much sense to do this in perspective. So we need to do it in full lateral planes or in views like bottom, so that we can get an accurate result. In this way, it will automatically extrude where we click. If we try to do it in perspective, it will be a bad situation. See, we may not get the result we want because it will not operate according to this perspective. This is why orthographic views are important rather than perspective. We know that the shortcut for this extra feature is E. In order to select the E of extrude and other options, we can act as follows. For example, let's say I want to activate individual. I select these two faces with Shift and press Alt-E on the keyboard. I remind you again, E for extrude. When I press Alt-E, I get three options. These three options correspond to the first three options you see in the toolbox. See, region, along normals and individual. When I press Alt-E on the keyboard, I see these again, and that is how we get there quickly. When I select individual faces directly using this shortcut, I just need to move the mouse. Automatically, that extrude feature is activated and it makes it practical for me to use. This mask on the scene would extrude when you press the letter E on the keyboard. I press the letter E. I cancel this selection with the right click of the mouse or the escape button. As you can see here, the number of vertexes, which was 48 just now, has now increased to 12 because an extrude operation was performed here. As I said a few more times in this video, I'm pressing the letter S on the keyboard and I'm shrinking this dimensioning inwards like this, and new faces have been created here. Now, I do the same operation here by pressing the letter I on the keyboard. And I'm doing the same thing again. And look what happened. We did similar operations, but in my last operation we used the inset faces here. Inset faces actually means that the operation we just did for extrude can be done faster. We are importing the polygons and creating a smaller area inside. Now I will undo the model and a little window opens at the bottom with options. In this window there is a field where you can adjust the width of the areas on this edge. There is also another field where you can adjust the depth. If we make this 0, it will be no different from extrude. As you can see, we are in a situation that shows exactly the operation of extrude, but with thickness. We turn to the purpose of inset faces. If you look at the shortcuts of inset faces, let's do these operations in this area this time. When I press the letter I on the keyboard, it activates this tool and tries to fulfill it until I click it again. When I press Ctrl on the keyboard, it is taking into account the depth issue we just talked about. When I remove my hand from the Ctrl key, it will resize again, this time from where I removed my hand. When I press Ctrl again, it will activate the depth. This way you can be more practical. You can continue this process until you click with the mouse. Now let's select this part and we will make an edit on inset. When I click select author here, it will select the author layer. When I click again, when I cancel it, this time it will select the inside. So it will allow us to edit on the author layer. For example, we can extrude here. I press the letter E and it will extrude only the selected author layer. So it can make your modeling easier. There was an option called individual in extrude, if you remember. Now I'm selecting this area like this. And I'm selecting select author, and here we have an option called individual. If we apply this effect again, this time it should do it individually. Look, I'm selecting individual. Only within themselves, each face gives this effect within itself. When I click select author again, this time it will select the author layer of the selected ones. The shortcut for this individual feature is to press the letter I again. So if it looks like this right now, if I press the letter I from the keyboard, it will consider all of them. It will consider all selected faces. And if I press I again, it will consider it individually. Each selected face will give this effect within itself. Now, let's reset the scene and move on to the settings of the next tool. When I select this one, we can make an edit like this, and then we can make some edits in the bevel properties at the bottom. For example, we can expand the segment, so we can get more oval structures. We can expand and collapse the profile part, so you can get different images according to your model. And you can also expand the offset part in this way. If such problems arise, you can overcome these problems by clicking the Clamp Overlap button. Bevel is a tool we use to soften more angular objects. Here is how we use it. With the shortcut I, go back again and select face. I press Ctrl B on the keyboard, B for bevel. When I press Ctrl B, with the last adjustments that we just set, it does this editing. When I move the wheel with the mouse, we can increase or decrease the segments. If we wish, we can make these adjustments later on in this window that opens. When we check the vertex only option here, it will do this process based on the corners of the face. That is, the vertexes, not the face. Again, the panel here allows us to make similar edits. We can also do this operation, the vertex operation, as follows. We just pressed Ctrl B. Now I'm resetting these operations. This time I press Ctrl Shift B while face is selected. And so we can operate on the vertexes as if the vertex mark is marked. And again, you can decrease and increase the segments here with the mouse wheel. Now there is a feature here called loop cut. We can say that the loop cut feature throws an edge all around. For example, let's make a loop cut on this bottom cube. Let's add a loop cut, and as you can see, we have a new edge here. When I add a loop cut vertically to this part, it cuts this part. It can be towed on this way. So we can say that it cuts around the selected areas. And this is a feature that's supporting modeling. The shortcut is Ctrl R. So when you press Ctrl R from the keyboard, it will automatically be as if I have selected the loop cut tool. When I click on the object by pressing Ctrl R, it allows me to drag it. Sometimes we need to add on the edges, not in the center. By pressing Ctrl R again, we can increase or decrease the number of these loop cuts with the mouse wheel. If we want to add more loop cuts, it allows you to add them in this way, so that we don't have to deal with them one by one. We can also position the loop cuts in a different way by scrolling. And let's say we add a loop cut in the center of the scene again with Ctrl R, and while this loop cut is selected, this tool allows us to add an extra loop cut to this existing loop cut by selecting the other option under the loop cut. The shortcut for this is Shift Ctrl R. So when we give the object such a loop cut, we can add extra loop cuts symmetrically by pressing Shift Ctrl R. And the knife. It is a tool that allows you to cut from one place to another and thus create new edges, new vertexes and new faces. So when I select here by pressing Enter, as you can see here, a new edge is created and therefore new vertexes and new faces are created. In general, we got to know the most used tools in modeling with their shortcuts and the options, and you can develop fast modeling systems using these shortcuts. These are the basics of modeling. That's it for this video. I hope it was useful. If today's video was useful to you, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel right now. Just click on the subscribe button below this video. Thank you for watching.